All right, that's enough. Very cool. Hey, look at us. We made it. We've made it to number 5, the 5th edition of Kōrero Café. Thank you very much, Joy Eaton. You loved the video. We had some feedback that we wanted to feature some New Zealand people rather than, you know, some just generic cafe jazz music. And so I picked my favorite all-time New Zealand artist, and we ended up with Ben Lummis. So there we go. Welcome everybody. Welcome. Thank you so much for coming along to Kōrero Café. It's epic to have you all here again today. I am going to open with a karakia and then we will crack on into it and have a good time. And with Ben Lummis in our head the whole time, it's going to be wonderful. So let us say a karakia together. Whakataka te hau ki te uru. Whakataka te hau ki te tonga. Kia mā kina kina ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai. E hi aki ana te atakura, he tio, he huka, he hohu, tihei, mauri ora. Woohoo! Very nice! Hey, kia ora koutou, no mai haere mai ki TNA, whatever we're calling this. Zooey, online training, digital book club, everyone's new highlight of a Thursday morning. Ka manaki o kia koutou, I will be your host today. Who am I? No o tautahia hou, kei tamaki makaurau taku kāinga, kei arataihi taku mahi, ko Zara toku ingoa. I'm Zara, I will be your host today, and I'm very excited to have you here for a couple of reasons, one of which is it's always good to have you here at Kōrero Café, but today is a day worth celebrating. It's Youth Week. Today's day 6 of Youth Week, so that's exciting. And also it's level 2. Welcome to level 2. But most importantly, Kōrero Café. That's why you're here, and that's the best thing about today, all right? So thank you for coming and spending time with us here rather than rushing to, I don't know, your friend's house and giving them a hug or spooning your best friend because you broke into her house at 11:59 p.m. May or may not have done that. But you've made it to Kōrero Café, so grab yourself a cup of something and pretend you're in a cafe. Today I'm drinking plum and boysenberry tea. I'm enjoying it. It's hot or cold brew. Haven't tried the cold brew yet, which is interesting. I will let you have I'll just explain a few things about why we're here and what's going on, but as we do that, I'll invite our panelists to turn on their videos so that as I'm talking, you've got someone else to look at. That's fun, isn't it? So panelists, if you want to reveal yourselves, I will talk a little bit about the kaupapa o te rā. There we are, look at these gorgeous faces, and then I will introduce the panelists, and we'll all be on the same page, and we'll crack into it. So you're here because this event's being hosted by Arataihi, so shout out to the Arataihi crew. Thank you for coming along, and especially to Shan, who is in the background making this whole thing happen. So shout out to all of them. Arataihi is the peak body for youth development in Aotearoa, so we're interested in anything and everything that is to do with young people. So that could be any kind of youth work activity, any kind of young people. That is our bread and butter. My particular role at Arataihi is I head up Korowai Tupu, which is the professional association for youth workers. And what's that? You want to know more about Korowai Tupu? Let me tell you. It's a community of youth workers who are passionate about youth work, particularly the professionalisation of youth work. We know that youth work is a unique profession, and it's its own thing, and so we've formed a professional body of people who are passionate about lifting the mana of youth work around the country. If you'd like to know more about that, then send me an email because I would love to tell you more about that, and I'd love to welcome you on board to our passionate youth worker friends. Today every day at Kōrero Café, we go through this wonderful book here. This is called Kaipara Huarahi, and it is a youth work journal. It's a series of articles written by youth workers for youth workers, which goes through the Mana Taiōhi framework. Mana Taiōhi is the new youth development strategy, out with the old and in with the new, although there are a lot of similarities along the way. So every article in here follows one of the principles of Mana Taiōhi. And today we are looking at Whai Wahitanga, a case study. So Georgia, who we have here, she wrote us an article and it's magnificent. So that's why we're interviewing her. Caitlin was a big part of that too, and they're talking about their youth advisory panel, which is who AJ is. AJ is a member of the youth advisory panel, so those are our guests today. A little bit of housekeeping. We do recommend you use gallery view as you do this. There's also the chat function, which I see some of you have used already. You can click on these down the bottom to get to them, by the way. So using the chat, you can say whatever you want. Give us a hi or a cheers or an, oh my goodness, Sarah, was that your husband walking past behind you in a robe? Again, may or may not have happened more than once. Also, send through your questions. There's a separate part for the questions. That is the Q&A panel, which you'll see down the bottom too. You can click on that, send through your questions, and we'll let you know when we've answered them. Also, put your hand up. There's a hand up function. You can put your hand up if you prefer to ask your question verbally, and then we can hear some other voices. That would be very exciting. Also, just letting you know too that this is being recorded, so if you love today, you can send it to your grandma later to enjoy too. So, given that it's Youth Week, the theme is We Are Speaking, Are You Listening? Today we've got our three guests, Georgia, Caitlin and AJ, and we're unpacking the article on page 56. If you've got your kaipara huarahi handy, page 56, which is all about the voice of young people. If you haven't read the article, that's totally fine. The context to the article is that it was written by the wonderful Georgia, and we've got her, as I said, we've got her accompanied by her workmate Caitlin, and they've brought along AJ too, who's a member of their youth advisory panel. I will let Georgia and Caitlin introduce AJ, but to introduce you to Georgia and Caitlin, let me tell you about them. They're both 26, they're both super smart, very articulate, they're also both beautiful. Caitlin's also a mum and survived lockdown with a 1-year-old, so that deserves a trophy. They're both very passionate about their mahi with the classification office and are also very involved in setting up and coordinating their youth advisory panel, which is what we're here to learn more about today. So that's enough of me. I'll pass over to Georgia and Caitlin. Perhaps if you go first, Georgia, since you wrote the article. Hit us both with a bit of an intro, who you are, where you're from, why you love young people, and then we'll hear from AJ in his role too. Cool.
Kia ora, I'm Georgia. Thank you for the intro, Zara, and thank you for the invite. We're really excited to be a part of this. I grew up in Wellington and I still live in Wellington now, and like Zara said, I work for the classification office. What did I do before then? I was studying at uni. I studied media studies and criminology when I was at university, and I guess I kind of headed down the right career path for what I studied, which was very unusual because a lot of people told me that media studies wouldn't get you a job. So I'm glad I managed to get a job. Before working at the classification office, I didn't have any sort of experience working with young people. So it's all kind of been a lot of learning for me is doing the youth advisory panel. I've had a lot of training through work for it, but prior to working there, I had no idea. So it's been fun, and I wasn't really expecting to ever work with young people, but I've actually really enjoyed it. So it's been good. Pass you on to Caitlin.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Georgia.
Morena, I'm Caitlin. So yeah, like Georgia, I also work for the OFLC. I am now a communications advisor and was a classification advisor only a few weeks ago. But I also help Georgia in facilitating the panel. I first came to the office as the youth engagement facilitator, but then have since progressed into different roles. I'm originally from Hawke's Bay, but I've been here for nearly 9 years now, I think. And as Zara mentioned, I have a 1-year-old. I apologize, she will make appearances and she's a screaming lunatic. So just bear with, I'll probably have to mute myself and Georgia might have to take over, but hopefully it'll work out.
Always exciting for a guest appearance from a lunatic. So
I mean, she is one. AJ can definitely testify to that. He's seen her screaming and running around. A bit more about me. I used to work for the Wellington District Police. I helped them establish a panel for first and second time Māori male offenders between the ages of 19 to 30. So that was pretty interesting. It's not quite youth work, but it definitely steered me in the right direction in terms of where I wanted to, or what I wanted to put my energy into. But yeah, it was really the office that inspired me to get involved with working with young people. We call it I don't know if other people say this, sorry if you can hear the screaming, but we call it the Youth Epiphany. We've all had it at some point, and it was pretty early on in my journey that I had that. And then I remember watching Georgia go through hers, and I made her do all these things and work with the youth panel. So it's really exciting. I'm really glad to be involved. Yeah, thanks.
Awesome. And would one of you guys like to introduce us to AJ, a member of your amazing youth advisory panel?
Sure. So I met AJ. We run an event called Censor for a Day, which we basically do a road show through New Zealand, and we show senior high school students a film that hasn't been released yet, and we take them through the classification process and teach them how New Zealand classification system works, basically. And AJ was at our event in Kōrero, and we kind of did like a shout out trying to find people who would be interested in joining our youth panel. And AJ approached us, and since then, I think that would have been like about a year ago that AJ joined. Yeah. And since then, he's been really great. He gets involved in everything, and we always think about AJ first when we want someone to get involved in stuff, because he's just so good, so keen to get involved.
Cool. What an epic intro, AJ. And I can testify to that, because when I was talking to these two and I said, who do you think would be good from your youth advisory panel? They both were like, AJ would be perfect. So AJ, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Kia ora everyone, hello. My name's AJ, as already stated. I'm from Kōrero. I'm born and raised. I've been in Kōrero my entire life, 18 years. I come from a Samoan background, full Samoan, both parents. From the islands, they immigrated here, and they had me and my two other siblings. So it's great to be in New Zealand. Formerly, I grew up in Winley. That is a school in Kōrero East. And then that was from my primary to intermediate years. Then from there, I went to Tau College. Enjoyed my years there. It was an amazing school. And now currently I'm studying at Victoria University. I'm studying communications, just like Caitlin, but a different institution. And yeah, so yeah, I've been with the youth advisory panel for a year, over a year now. I joined during the Sense of a Day event. It was marvelous learning about the classification, all that kind of side of their whole procedure of the Office of Film and Literature classification. And I'm enjoying this youth engagement they have with the youth advisory panel. And it's been amazing. It's really engaging, and learning them engaging with the New Zealand youth has been, I think, a critical tool to try and get, youth voices much more higher and much more well known, because, as Zara did say, can you hear our voices? Like, we are a part of New Zealand as well. So it's been fun. I haven't had any sort of negative connotations or anything with the youth advisory panel. I've enjoyed my time, and hopefully I can continue to do that. So thank you for having us. And,
awesome, perfect. Thank you, AJ. And you've tied it back to this whole kaupapa of Youth Week amazingly, which is what we're all about at Arotaohi, full stop. But also particularly this week, we're going hard on that message. So thank you very much. That's amazing. So my first question for you guys, and this is a prompt to our attendees to please send through your questions via the Q&A. First of all, I see you've answered the poll, so thank you very much for that. Looks like we've had about 50-50 split with people who have read the article and people who haven't read the article. That's fine if you haven't, but extra props, extra brownie points, extra kudos, whatever you're secretly hoarding, to those of you who have. So thank you very much for doing that. It's awesome. So just can I get one of you, Caitlin or Georgia, to tell me first of all, just broadly, what does the classification office do? What is your job?
So we're the body responsible for classifying anything that can basically be defined as a publication. it's pretty broad. So we mainly classify things like films, video games, TV series, sometimes books. But in the past, we've also classified things like caravans and T-shirts. So it's pretty broad. But
How
a
do you
majority.
classify a caravan?
So there was some caravans in New Zealand, so a rental company that you could hire caravans from, and they had graffiti on their vans, and some of it contained like references to drug use and sexual references. So we had to classify those because we had complaints from the public about them. But yeah, so it kind of shows how broad what we do is. But I think a majority of what the public would see would be the films, video games side of what we do. I'm just going to close my curtain because I look like Edward Cullen.
Awesome, go ahead. That's pretty exciting. I think classification is pretty important. And so, sorry, Caitlin, maybe you can pick up where Georgia left off. Can you just tell us exactly what you mean by classifying something? Like, does that just mean giving something a rating, or is there more to it than that?
Well, yeah, basically it is that. So we have the rating system in New Zealand. We don't do anything under an M, that's the labeling body, but we basically look at all the problematic content. So we go M, R13, R16, R18. We also deal with objectionable material. So often things that go through the courts, we're responsible for banning those or just giving them a fair assessment. One thing that sparks to mind is the Christchurch video, the mosque shooting. That's something that we classified and banned in the office. So yeah, that's basically what classifying is, I guess, is analysing the content and then giving it a rating depending on its impact.
Awesome. That sounds like an extremely important job. It's not a job that I think I would like to do. I have a lot of respect for the people who do it though, so thank you very much for it's a service to the country. So that's awesome. Cool to hear. So your article tells us, Georgia, that you established a youth advisory panel in June 2018. Can you tell us a little bit about, and I know Caitlin, you were part of this too. Can you tell us what led to this decision and how you formed the panel? And it's funny, Caitlin, you talking about the epiphany that comes and how you kind of watched Georgia go through that. So whoever wants to speak to this, perhaps both of you, tell us what led to the decision and then how you went about forming that panel.
I'll jump in here if that's all right, Georgia. So I came on to the office as a youth engagement facilitator. So in the past, we had done one-off consultations with young people. We've done a sexual violence report before where we did engage with young people, and we've done things like, I think 50 Shades of Grey comes to mind, where we got a couple of young people into the office and talked about that and the harms of that. And basically everything that we do in the office, if you think about restrictions, we've got R13, R16, R18. Those ratings predominantly affect young people at the end of the day. So what we're doing is making decisions on behalf of them. And it just seems silly that we didn't have a constant engagement with young people in our office. And it was just really disconnected. And a part of our role as the OFLC is to reach out to the community and consult with them as much as possible. So I came on and basically started looking into ways that we could engage with young people more often, and so it was a lot easier as well. So I went down the road of a youth advisory panel. I actually went through people in the youth sector and interviewed a few names that people might recognise, like Rod Baxter, Anya, who used to work at Arataiohi, and yeah, just a few other people, and just to try and get a clear idea of what would be the most effective way to work with young people, but also do it ethically. And so it's a mutual benefit for both them and for us.
To give you some, sorry to interrupt, but to give you some excellent credit for that, one of the comments from Rob Baxter, he apologised he couldn't make it today. He really, really wanted to hear you guys speak. But he said this youth advisory panel is best practice youth participation. So you've obviously gone about that process very well to get the big tick on the youth participation guru himself, Rod Baxter. So well done there.
But yeah, it was a really interesting journey. I developed a framework for the office, for the youth advisory panel. that acts as the foundation of the panel. I think that as we were getting closer to involved, Georgia and I were considering updating it and keeping it as a living document, because, you know, we see the youth sector as an evolving area, and we're wanting to really stay on top of that game. But yeah, I think I've written a few notes down. Let's see if I've forgotten anything. I think that's about it. But basically, as we got closer to June, which Zara mentioned, I was having my daughter. So I had the great opportunity to pick who I thought was suitable in taking over the youth panel and making sure that that was well looked after. And I couldn't have chosen a better person. Georgia's been great. She's my counterpart. It's been great. And it's so nice actually being able to work with her again on that and being back in the office. Yeah.
That is some sweet warm fuzzies there. Georgia, do you have anything to add to that?
Not really. I think Caitlin covered it off pretty well. I guess initially we kind of didn't really know what we were doing when it came to recruiting new people to join the panel and just the running of meetings. So over the past 2 years, it's kind of been a huge learning curve for us, and some things have gone wrong and some things have worked out really well. So we're still learning now, but it's been fun, and I've enjoyed doing it. It's been good.
Cool. So let's hear from you now, AJ, a little bit about what has your experience been like on this youth advisory panel? How did you get involved, and what is it that keeps you involved?
So I got involved through the census over there, as I said earlier. They managed to get me on board. They managed to persuade me. They had another member that used to be with us, I believe Sam. He was a vocal member within the panel, and it was amazing to see someone that was on the panel be able to speak in front of a lot of young, interested individuals in this particular field. And I got swayed by that, and they did a little quick, funny presentation. And I gave them my email. We set up an interview, and oh my life, that interview was shocking because I was so scared because that was my first serious interview. And I thought I was going to be interviewed by one or at least two. Instead, I've got the three. So that was amazing. So I had three individuals, throw some questions at me. But I enjoyed it. It was nice to see how are they like, and what are they interested in, what are their perspective on the youth advisory panel. So I did get a little bit of insight in that. What's keeping me in this youth advisory panel is the level of engagement they give us and the opportunities they have. For example, we've been very active in participating with the local police down in Wellington. We've been working alongside them with Courtney Place, giving them some youth perspective on that and giving them some ideas and possible solutions to try and solve the issues they encounter. Recently, we did a little engagement of drug use with them as well. Another thing is that the OFLC has been trying to get some youth perspective on classifying and what do the youth think about how they classify material and their kind of procedures, and we've been active in that. And I think my biggest and I think my proudest was participating in an oral submission for Parliament on behalf of this CVOD legislation. I was fortunate enough to join two other members of the panel, Lulu and Robbie. We basically shared our input on the CVOD, which is the Commercial Video on Demands legislation, which is basically getting online or streaming platforms like Netflix or Disney Plus or HBO, some criteria they need to meet for their material to be distributed in New Zealand, and we are very fortunate. I'm speaking on their behalf, but I hope they share the same idea or reason behind this. But we really felt that we wanted to get active because this is the youth is very active on Netflix or like streaming platforms, and we just wanted to set a foundation for these streaming platforms to for their material to be classified. And it was very interesting. And you know, sitting in front of Parliament, like the Select Committee, the Administration and Governance Committee, I believe, sitting in front of them, it was frightening. But you know, somehow we snapped and went off the flow and managed to get straight into it. So I think it's activities or opportunities like these that we're very fortunate and keeps myself and I'm pretty sure the other members, 13, 14 members, to keep them active and, you know, have fun and learn new things every day. So yeah.
That's awesome, AJ, and I mean, I love that you get to be a part of really raising the profile of something that's important. I think definitely videos on demand is like, I can see, and from my limited knowledge of how the classification office even works, I can see how it would be very easy to monitor like what goes on TV back in the day. But now with the internet and now with streaming online, it's, you know, I'm good on you. I'm glad that you were a part of that. That's very cool. I'm curious, AJ, because we're talking about whaiwahitanga or youth participation or chasing your place, however different people interpret it. How has your involvement with this youth advisory panel, I guess, like, empowered you in other ways? Like, does it make you want to be involved in other youth advisory panels, or is there anything that it kind of has it's built up in you?
Definitely, I think it's made me much more confident to get more active in procedures like these, like the Parliament. You know, it's very interesting. Because you know, OFLC, because of the engagement, it's really built me up as an individual, confidence, being more aware of like this particular topic that I never knew, but it's very interesting because it does involve us as well. And it's really great to be able to join in this relatively unknown yet new kind of field that's continually to evolve and have a say in that. And I'm hoping I get more opportunities because, you know, I'm very excited or always interested in trying to get involved and give a perspective, I guess. So yeah, it has built me up to be much more confident and much more proactive in this field and try and get a youth perspective or youth say in this field that really goes under the radar.
Cool, that's amazing. I was thinking the other day that it's Youth Week, and I'm 28. Some people think that's young. I don't like the pending 30 there. But I was thinking the other day, I really wish I had taken advantage of those opportunities between 18 to 24, because as we know, the government definition of youth in New Zealand is ages 12 to 24, and I think I just sort of stopped all of my opportunities like that when I left high school. And so I absolutely respect you for keeping up and doing, now that you know, even though you're 18 and you're studying out, you know, beyond high school. I think it's so important, and I wish I did more, and I'm a little bit jelly. So good on you. I'm really stoked for you, AJ, and the other crew of people who are also on the youth advisory panel. Let's throw back to Georgia and Caitlin, and you can choose who answers this or how exactly you'd like to go about it. But your article says that you it says you found the negative stereotypes around young people to be untrue. So it's Youth Week. Tell us a little bit about the untrueness of that stereotype and the good experience that you had working with young people, and I guess then why you'd recommend it. Because I think actually in your article, I don't have this as a quick reference, but you say like often the perception of young people is that they don't have enough life experience to be able to input. So maybe you could tell us about how you found that to be untrue.
Yeah, so I guess what I meant by that was that a lot of the time they're kind of dismissed as maybe not being as interested or not obviously having the life experience like a lot of people believe. But I think that's untrue. Like they're digital natives. They're all over the internet. They're involved in social media. They know more than me about a lot of technology and new apps and things like that. So that's proof in itself that they know more than me and they have a lot more to contribute in those sorts of conversations. Like a lot of the time we'll talk to them and they'll bring up things about a random app that I've never heard of, and like talk about the kind of negative harms that can come from using things like that. And you know, obviously they've got a different life experience, they're younger than me. They, I think a lot of things that come up in our meetings, I guess, is that their generation is sort of not stuck on the internet, but they're kind of very much online. So their experience growing up is a lot different from even mine and Caitlin's. Like we didn't have that growing up really, and the generation's older than us, so they've got a lot more to contribute in terms of those conversations.
Myself, yourself, and Caitlin, we're the last generation to grow up without Wi-Fi. We are a rare breed.
Yeah. So we often find when we're talking to young people about just anything and to do with those sorts of things, they know exactly what they're talking about. They have a lot of ideas to bring forward to the table. And AJ just talking before is proof that they're actually interested in getting involved in these things. And I think a lot of the time people think that young people aren't interested in getting involved in the government and things like that. So does that kind of answer what you were saying?
Yeah, that's great. Do you have anything to add to that, Caitlin?
I think that what kind of springs to mind with what Georgia was talking about, it made me remember a time where and AJ will remember, when I we filmed him talking about, I think it was Mental Health Awareness Week. We did that video, and he spoke really beautifully about the snowflake generation, how they've been labelled that really unfairly. And I can't remember what you said, AJ, and you might be able to remember, but it was something like, we're one of the most empathetic generations, and yeah, we've been labeled the snowflake generation, but in a way it's a good thing, because the amount of empathy that I have is just incredible, and it shines. It really does.
Whoops, I'm not on mute. That's so sweet. I haven't heard the snowflake generation, but I absolutely agree. My observations are that we've got a generation of young people who are more accepting and more tolerant and more empathetic than ever before. So I love how you articulated that. Hey, we've had a question come through on the chat, which is, could you share more about the online media classification process? For example, 13 Reasons Why. Can you tell us about the whole process that's sort of wrapped around that? Any of you welcome to answer this?
So so our legislation was written in 1993, which was the year I was born, which was a long time ago. And back then, when they wrote the legislation, they never assumed that the internet would be capable of what it is achieving now, which is being able to stream videos and things like that online. So there's a gray area in our legislation, which means that online content isn't covered. So it's basically all unregulated. But we do have one advantage in this area, and that's if we do get enough complaints from the public about a particular publication that's online. David, who's the chief censor, he can call in a publication and have it classified, but we have to put in some steps to actually have that happen, and that's what happened with 13 Reasons Why. Another film that we did that with was To the Bone. Tiger King is a recent one that we did that with, and it's basically films that deal with things that Netflix doesn't necessarily find important to warn New Zealand audiences about. So New Zealanders are particularly sensitive to things like depictions of self-harm or suicide and sexual violence, but in other countries, the audiences aren't as sensitive to those things. So we often find that we're classifying content from online places like Netflix for films that deal with those things. Does that kind of answer?
Yeah, harder. That's fascinating. I'm really interested in what your comparison from New Zealand audiences to other audiences do, and maybe the answer is you don't know, but do you have any idea why we might be more sensitive to self-harm or sexual violence?
I think that's probably mainly down to the fact that New Zealand has really high rates of like a high suicide rate and things like that. Places like Australia, they never warn their audiences about suicide. It's just something that they're not so concerned about. I'm not entirely sure why, but I'm assuming it's because their audiences they don't take that in as much, and they aren't as affected by it, I guess.
And I'm curious to hear about this too from a young person's perspective, AJ. And I don't know, you don't need to speak specifically about a specific program unless you'd like to. Do you think that, I mean, you're here representing all young people of New Zealand right now. So do you agree with that? Do you think we maybe have, I don't think vulnerable is the right word, but do you think we're a little more sensitive to particular issues, and any ideas or thoughts of why you think that might be?
Yeah, I think look at climate change. In Wellington, we had so many strikes last year because we had a lot of passionate individuals about climate change, and their whole argument was about we are the people that will be left on Earth to suffer through these consequences of climate change. And I think I guess you could try and use that as a basis to work off like 13 reasons why. And all that type of material or content is that this generation, in my view, were extremely passionate. I guess that's why we get labeled snowflakes, even though we're very empathetic. And I think we just are very passionate to get involved. And we've seen, young participation in these sort of procedures and these sort of things. Like I had a lot of friends participate in the global climate change strike in Wellington. I couldn't go because I had a test on that day, so rip me. It sucked, but oh well, we'll go next time. But yeah, it's a really, I guess my answers. I can't really speak on everybody's perspectives because I don't know if, but I guess on my one and the panel, I think we just extremely passionate about these things and we take it to heart. I think we just tend to like really invest ourselves in these sort of things, and such things we take to heart. And yeah, that's all I could say for now. Sorry.
Great. We've had another couple questions come through. One is pretty broad, which is, can you give us some thoughts on why classification is important? Why do we need to have the procedures that you guys have in place? Why does someone need to do it? Why is it important? Do you want to answer that one for us? No. Any of you are welcome to answer this one. Perhaps not Caitlin right in this very moment in time.
I guess now, just because of the way the internet works, we can't stop people from watching whatever they're going to watch. They're going to watch it anyway. That's basically the view we've got at this point, is that even though something could be classified R18, a 13-year-old is going to watch it whether or not we want them to or not. So the important thing for us, I guess, at this point is using these classifications, and the warnings are really important because it gives people the tools and the knowledge they need before watching something, especially just in relation to what I was talking about before, like suicide and self-harm. If you're particularly sensitive to those sorts of things, or you just don't want to watch it because it could be just something that you find just hard to watch, then classifications are important because people can make decisions about what they want to watch without having to, I don't know, get traumatized by something. Some people don't like horror movies, and it's good for them to know that there's horror in the film, so they don't want to watch it, basically. I guess. Do you want to add to that, Caitlin?
Yeah, I guess like what Georgia was saying, people are going to make their own decisions at the end of the day. But what we want to do is empower New Zealanders and make sure that their decision is based on the facts of, without any spoilers of a film, but they're just aware that it will contain X, Y, Z, and so that they can make an informed decision about what they watch.
That's amazing. And I know you used the example of Tiger King before. My own personal story with that is that I did watch the first few episodes, and then someone gave me a heads up. I don't know if you'd like this, Sarah. And it took me quite a lot of hunting to find that it could. I'm a sucker for animal cruelty. I'm a bloody vegan. Like it's, I don't like it at all. And so I chose not to watch that because someone had given me that recommendation. That was pretty early on with Tiger King. So perhaps before any recommendations were put out there for it. And I think what you're saying is exactly right, giving people a heads up of what it might contain, so that they're aware of it before it happens and they can make the choice. And I think the horror films, man, that's such a good example. There's so many people who are like, oh, has this got horror in it? Because I'm not into that. Because people know their own boundaries quite well. And AJ, I'm keen to hear your point, your perspective on this too as a young person. I remember when I was younger, being, you know, like the novelty of, oh, I can go to my friend's house and they've got out an R18 DVD, and even though I'm only 14, I can watch this R18 DVD. What are your thoughts on kind of on that, and also knowing your limits? Yeah, do you have anything to say on that?
Okay. Well, growing up, the only friends I had was my neighbor. So I didn't really have, I would say like a whole cluster of friends where I could just throw myself in their house and they would like open their door and say, hey, welcome AJ, come, haere mai, come have a sit, come, let's watch some things. No, I fortunately didn't have that. The only friend I had was my Burmese friend, Wei Lin. But my thoughts on that, I never really got into watching like those kind of restricted material because I was restricted to the television. See, I'm a cable guy, so I was growing up. We never really had Netflix back then, so you know, I'm like a 2000 guy. Growing up, however, in college and that, we did watch like R16 stuff, but that was for school stuff, like World War II, for example. You know, learning about history and all that kind of that graphic, violent content. But my thoughts on classification is that, yeah, I want to work off of Georgia, is that it's information not for the young people to use, but it's for older adults who are in charge of content and material to make those informed decisions, to say, hey, like my kid is about to watch something with me. What sort of material content can I watch that wouldn't affect them, you know, physically or mentally, or those kind of different aspects? So it is that informed decision. And Robbie enlightened me during the oral submission. He made a really good comment. He said it's not for the children, it's classification material for the adults to make decisions. And I was like, whoa, Robbie, like, thank God I was with you in the, in the oral submission, because I thought that was the quote of the year for me. So that stuck with me, and that changed my perspective. I said, like, hang on a second, yeah, it's really up to the adult to give them the necessary tools to show how transparent this material it is, so they can make that decision that possibly shouldn't give any dire consequences. So yeah.
Amazing, incredible. I love it. I love it. Hey, we've just got time for one last, actually two last questions. This one will just be a quick one. This has come through in the Q&A. How can our young people get involved in the Censor for a Day program?
So Censor for a Day, we run it twice a year, and we kind of change up where we go around the country. We do different regions, and we invite schools. So if you know of young people that would be interested in going to Censor for a Day, get their school to get in contact with us, and we can send them invites through school.
Look at that, it's that easy. Get their school to get in contact with you. Is the best way to go through your website?
Yeah, our website has our contact details on there, so you just send an email and then we can get in touch with the school.
Too easy, look at that. I'm keen to just finish up with this one last question, and we're right on time now to fit into our little morning tea break window. So here there's a bunch of youth workers who are tuning in today. So what is your number one tip for people who might be thinking about doing something similar, developing their own youth advisory panel or getting young people involved? What's your number one tip for people who might be thinking of doing something like that?
Do it. It's probably, you won't regret it. I mean, I talked about the young person epiphany before, and you'll have it and it blows your mind. You know, we often collaborate with other agencies with the youth panel in a very controlled way, and each time we see these people have this amazing experience with young people, and we're like, cool, get your own now. It's, you know, you can have this 24/7 and they're so great, and it is applicable to what you're doing. You will find more and more things to work with on everyday stuff that comes up at work. So yeah, do it. That's my advice. You won't regret it.
Great, do it. Excellent advice. Anything you'd like to add to that, Georgia?
Basically everything Caitlin said. And if you are wanting some help with it, just get in touch with us, because we've had 2 years of experience now, and we've had the bumps in the roads, and we've had lots of good highs, so we can help you out with whatever you need.
Awesome, then that's an offer, that sounds like. So there you go, personal consultation with Georgia. She'll help you out and get you set up in your organisation. What about you, AJ? What's your tip for people hoping to involve young people the same way you've been involved?
Get them involved through opportunities. Like I was fortunate enough to get involved in these different opportunities they gave us and the other panel members to really get involved and make it fun and engaging and a nice learning. Add a little bit of, you know, new things for them to learn of the processes, as well as we were fortunate enough to go to different physical locations and see how we can get stuff done over there as well, with the police station, going to, you know, the Office of Film Literature Classification Office, you know, going to different venues, going to the Roxy Theatre, I think the Wellington Cinema, the Empire Building, I can't remember the top of my brain, but yeah, you know, go to different locations, go to venues, get them involved, get them moving. Don't do like, you know, paperwork and all that, all blah, blah, blah. Just get them to learn stuff. Yeah, some paperwork maybe, but you know, it's nice to get them physically involved there.
Cool, that's awesome. You've said something that's fun, something's engaging, something where they can learn, but most importantly, experiential. And you know what? I think that when it comes to when youth workers are the best at that, so hopefully it would work out well for them all. Hey, it's so exciting. Thank you so much, team, for being here today. That's all we've got time for. I'm incredibly grateful, and I'm so grateful, especially having. I mean, it's wonderful, absolutely wonderful, the expertise of Georgia and Caitlin. And thank you, Georgia, for writing the article. I'd like to be published in a journal one day. That's pretty exciting, but jelly there. But most importantly, thank you so much, AJ, for joining us for Youth Week. As a young person yourself, it's excellent. We're so proud to be able to showcase you and the work that you've been doing. It's amazing. So, ngā mihi nui kia koutou. Thank you very much for being our guest panelist today. Special thanks to AJ. Thank you to our attendees too. We appreciate your commitment to this whole kaupapa. Announcement for you all. We will be continuing Kōrero Café weekly. So keep your Thursday morning tea break free for the next few weeks while we keep journeying through Mana Taiahui Kaipara Huarahi and interviewing the authors from here. So yes, keep your mornings free on a Thursday. I will finish with a karakia, and we'll pop in the chat the Classification Office website, so that if any of you want to learn a little bit more or read their research report. I know you guys did a research report on porn, which is pretty interesting for people to have a look at. We'll chuck a link in the chat. So let me finish with the karakia, and then we will say see you later. Kia tau, kia tātou katoa. Te atawhai o tō tātou ariki a ihu karaite. Me te aroha o te atua, me te whiwhi ngātahitanga ki te wairua tapu. Ake, 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 āmine.